Climate. Climate refers to the long-term weather pattern of a specific area of a planet. The word climate comes from the Greek word
Clinine.
meaning to slope.
While the orbit remains an ellipse, its position or orientation in space changes over time. Due to the tilt of the Earth, the whole area does not receive an equal amount of sunlight. The Earth spins around its own axis, and imaginary line from the North Pole to the South Pole, which dips and wobbles gradually. The Earth could then be imagined like a spinning top or jumbo, turning and wobbling in its path about the Sun.
The elements in this interaction between the Sun and the Earth are defined as follows. The first one is aphelion. Aphelion refers to the point in the orbit of the Earth farthest from the Sun. Aphelion occurs on the 3rd or 4th of July. The second one is perihelion. Perihelion is the point in the orbit of the Earth closest to the Sun. So as you can see in the picture, the two elements are opposite with each other. The Earth's axial tilt is the inclination angle of the Earth's rotational axis in a line perpendicular to its orbital plane. In winter, the northern hemisphere is tilted away from the Sun. This means few hours each day has spent in daylight. In summer, the northern hemisphere is tilted towards the Sun. This means more hours has spent in daylight each day. The next one is precession. It is the change of the orientation of the rotational axis of the Earth. Precession is caused by the gravitational influence of the Sun and the Moon acting on the Earth's equatorial bulge. Equinox. Equinox refers to the time the Sun at noon is directly over the equator. It happens twice a year and causes almost equal length of day and night. Solstice. Solstice happens when the Sun at noon sits above the Tropic of Cancer or Tropic of Capricorn. The summer solstice has the longest period of daylight in the year, and winter solstice has the shortest period. The last one, precession of the equinoxes. It refers to the motion of the equinoxes relative to the precession of the Earth's axis of rotation. It happens over thousands of years.
Milankovitch parameter cycle. Milankovitch showed that the characteristics of Earth's orbit and the axis orientation can change the time affecting climate. Over a period of approximately 100,000 years, the shape of Earth's orbit gradually changes from circulated to elliptical. At the present, the Earth's axis tilts with respect to the plane of its orbit at an angle of 23.1 degrees. These high-latitude regions receive less energy per square meter than low-latitude regions. We have seasons because Earth's axis is not perpendicular to the plane of its orbit. Because of the tilt amount of sunlight a region receives varies throughout the year. Milankovitch calculated that the angle of Earth's tilt varies between 22.5 degrees and 24.5 degrees, with a periodicity of 41,000 years. Thus, the amount of sunlight that a point of Earth's surface receives at a particular time of the year varies over time. The Earth's axis precesses or wobbles like a top over the course of about 25,000 years. Precession determines the timing of the seasons relative to the position of the Earth along its orbit from the Sun. Thanks for watching. I'm Sultan Bernijay, best at Soxtad 2A.
So next is global warming. Global warming is the long-term heating of Earth
Earth's climate system observed since the pre-industrial period between 1850 and 1900. Due to human activities, primarily fossil fuel burning, which increases heat-trapping greenhouse gas levels in Earth's atmosphere. The term is frequently used interchangeably with the term climate change, though the latter refers to both human and naturally produced warming and the effects it has on our planet. So the Milankovitch parameter seems to be part of the cause of climate change, though not the only cause. Some other factors seem to be needed today as the world considers climate change and its implications on food security and national development. Many nations are taking a deeper look at the science behind the issue. Most of the scientists who study climate change agree that the average temperature of the Earth's atmosphere has been increasing by over 90% in the latter part of the 20th century. What are the causes of this phenomenon? There are two opposing arguments on the issue of whether or not this global warming is just natural. One side states that nature is simply acting according to its laws with no reference to human beings and their actions is the main reason. For the foreviewers of this belief, global warming will happen naturally as the sun rises and sets. Meanwhile, the other side maintains that global warming is caused or greatly abused by the actions of human beings. It lays the blame on the actions of humanity past and present. An oft-cited fact to better understand global warming is the temperature of the planet versus the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. In the graph, the x-axis shows the year and the y-axis represents the amount of carbon dioxide or the CO2 in the atmosphere measured in parts per million or ppm. It should be noted that the amount of CO2 in the years before 1950 remains fairly constant but begins to climb afterwards. An important visual is the sharpness of the CO2 increase around the beginning of the present century. Some scientists believe this level could reach an irreversible situation in which the heat and temperature of the planet will be unstable and unpredictable. It should be remembered as well that while CO2 is a known indicator of global warming, it is not the only greenhouse to be concerned with.
What is the meaning of greenhouse gas? A greenhouse gas is a gas in an atmosphere that absorbs and emits radiation within the thermal infrared range. This process is the fundamental cause of the greenhouse effect. The primary greenhouse gases in Earth's atmosphere are without vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and also without greenhouse gases. The average temperature of Earth's surface would be about -18 degrees Celsius rather than present average of 15 degrees Celsius. In the solar system, the atmospheres of Venus, Mars, and Titan also contain gases that causes a greenhouse effect. Human activity since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, taken as the year of 1750, have produced a 40% increase in the atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide from the 280 ppm of 1750 of 400 ppm in 2015. This increase has occurred as spread up to date of a large portion of the emission by farmers' natural sinks involved in the carbon cycle. Anthropogenic carbon dioxide emissions came from combustion of carbon-based fuels, principally coal, oil, and natural gas, along with deforestation, consumption, and animal agriculture.
Future actions in climate change. Earth is set to experience its 5 warmest years on record. As long-term warming trends continue, 1.1 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial period. Increasing greenhouse gas concentrations would fuel future global heat. Ice is shrinking. Glaciers are retreating. Sea level rise is accelerating. Ocean heat is at recorded levels. Ocean acidification is increasing. Extreme weather has impacted lives and sustainable development on every continent. The chance of keeping temperature increase below 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of the century is slipping away. Carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere show no signs of falling.
Another area of debate is centered on the predictions as to what will happen to the climate of the world in the future. This is the difficult questions to answer since the climate is a chaotic system that can only be understood using a computer models. Future changes are expected to include a warmer atmosphere, a warmer and more acidic ocean, higher sea levels, and the larger changes in precipitation patterns. Some scientists take the issue further by setting tipping points, specifying values of meteorological parameters. The latter is often referred to as a tipping point. A tipping point is a large about change that cannot readily be stopped at the last minute. However, by employing drastic measures, possible tipping points may include the collapse of major ice sheets in Greenland and Antarctica, is the disruption of thermohaline circulation. Next is a sudden release of methane. And the last is the ocean uptake of carbon. Scientists have predicted that long-term effects of climate change will include a decrease in the sea ice and increase in permafrost thawing, an increase in heat waves and heavy precipitation, and decreased water resources in semi-arid regions. In chaos theory, it means that the Earth-atmosphere relationship would become a chaotic region where uncertainty would exist. Greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere will continue to increase unless the billions of tons of our annual emissions decrease substantially. Increased concentrations are expected to increase Earth's average temperature, influence the patterns and amounts of precipitation, reduce ice and snow cover, as well as permafrost, raise sea level, increase the acidity of the oceans, increase the frequency, intensity, and duration of extreme events, shift ecosystems characteristics, and increases threats to human health. These changes will impact our food supply, water resources, infrastructure, ecosystem, and even our own health. It allows for the emergence of technology that spreads and applies knowledge for the attainment of a good life. It must be realized that science is more like a cookbook than a blueprint. It is open for experimentation, innovation, and refinement. Climate models predict that Earth's global average temperature will rise in the future, but the amount of warming depends on the decisions we make about fossil fuel and land use. Generally, science has given humanity a tool for modernization. It allows for the emergence of technology that spreads and applies knowledge for the attainment of the good life. People must have to think the possible consequences on every actions that we make, ensuring the best and the good effects to the condition of our environment. We must have to think first the welfare of everyone, not only for the humanity, but also to the plants, animals, and most of all, our environment in the future.